Breaking Points is asking the right questions and inviting Thomas Massey and Khanna at this time when there is slowly a consensus developing within the US Congress, especially amongst the Democrats, that we cannot just keep funding foreign invasions at the behest of a different country. It hurts us, it hurts our people, it hurts our servicemen, it hurts our allies, it hurts our assets, and most importantly, something that a lot of the DSA candidates have ran on, and slowly Democrats are also waking up to, is those funds that we send elsewhere could be better invested here in the US for our own people. So let's listen to this conversation, and I'll try to share a few thoughts while this conversation happens.
Wanted to transition to talk about this amendment that was a big vote in the House yesterday. Congressman Massey, you offered this amendment. We can put D1 up on the screen here. Ultimately, it failed, but created quite a lot of intrigue in the Democratic caucus in particular. You were the only Republican that voted yes on this amendment, which cut all funding for Israel. You actually had a narrow majority of Democrats who did vote for the proposal, which is just such a sea change in the positioning of the Democratic Party. I mean, previously, the relationship with Israel was really lockstep across the board. So I'm curious for your reaction to how this vote broke down, and if you're surprised that none of your colleagues are where you are right now on this issue.
Well, the reason I was able to get this vote on the floor of the House, I sincerely wanted to vote. I offered 3 amendments to defund foreign aid to Egypt, foreign aid to Jordan, and foreign aid to Israel. And the Republican leadership, to my surprise, allowed me to get the vote on Israel. But I think that's because they made a political calculation. I believe it's a miscalculation, but they made a political calculation that this would be a hard vote for Democrats. And it did turn out to be a hard vote for Democrats. It should have been a hard vote for Republicans because now they've all locked into this idea that American taxpayers should give weapons and billions of dollars. I pointed out in my floor speech, we spend more on offensive weapons to Israel than we do on homeless veterans in the United States. And so every Republican has voted to send offensive weapons to Israel, $3.3 billion. The vote was successful, though. My litmus test, we've had votes like this in the past. You get maybe 6 or 10 people to vote for amendments like this. In fact, my vote to defund Jordan got 6 votes. Okay. But this was different. This moment in time is different because you can't objectively look at what's happening in Gaza and say that there's no moral hazard here for American taxpayers. 70,000 people have died in a country of 2 million people. I mean, it's incredible. It's horrific. And so, but the fact that I thought, let me just say, my own secret number in my head was people were like, how many votes are you going to get? I would say dozens because I thought I would get 24. Votes. And 60, if I got 60, I would have considered it a success. And 100 was beyond what I imagined we could get. But eventually, Nancy Pelosi endorsed the amendment.
That was a shocker.
Crazy.
I can only say that because I lost my primary. I think part of the reason I lost my primary is Khanna endorsed it.
Don't blame me.
I'm going to just say something right now. This is the kind of politics that will uplift America. There's a Democrat, there's a Republican. They are accepting and acknowledging the challenging politics that happens on the floor. But what social media does, and this is something that I'm realizing now, is it just shows you one side of a conversation. And that is why someone like me, I'm finally deciding that, okay, I need to start weighing in on this because I genuinely believe that we as a country, we as a nation, we as a global superpower have not just the right, but also the responsibility to behave in a manner that people around the world views us as a North Star. And that's not been happening for a very long time.
But, Nancy Pelosi came out for it. The minority whip came out for it. But the minority leader came out against it. So it really did split, the Democrats, I think in time, this for the 103 Democrats and myself who voted not to send this money to Israel, it's as time goes on, that's going to be a better and better vote. And the people that were on the other side of that, including all of my conference except for me, are going to regret this vote.
Congressman Khanna, yeah, curious for your reaction. This was a major intra-democratic war. You had the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who voted for. You had the majority whip, who then, of course, said that they would cut to vote 8. I'm curious for your reaction here about this split within the Democratic caucus. You were an original leader on a movement like this to watch, a significant portion of your Democratic colleagues eventually come to your position. What does that foretell for the future of the Democratic Party?
I was joking with Thomas that we had more caucus meetings discussing his amendment than any Democratic legislation.
Wow, that's crazy, actually.
They really had like Sunday afternoon calls to discuss the Massey amendment and caucus meetings. But this should have been such a simple vote. I mean, we have to go beyond this, but obviously we shouldn't be giving them U.S. tax dollar aid for military weapons. In my view, we shouldn't be giving them military weapons to be killing civilians. And we need to be sanctioning the banks and government officials who are engaged in the settlement and work on recognizing a Palestinian state. But in my view, you had 103 folks, and the new Congress, you're going to have even more, and that it's going to become a very, very small minority eventually that is going to be saying, let's just have continued aid to Israel.
It's pretty wild to see Nancy Pelosi vote for it and Hakeem Jeffries vote against it.
Yeah.
And Pelosi, people are sharing all kinds of clips of her now saying, like, if the Capitol were to crumble, the one thing that would remain is our, solidarity with Israel. And now here she is on her way out. And she's like, yeah, we'll vote to defund this. And I think she sees the writing on the wall. She's a very savvy political operator of where things are going. I cannot for the life of me really understand Hakeem Jeffries' calculus here. Because while there is such a split in the House Democratic caucus, there is not a split among the Democratic base.
There's not.
Overwhelmingly, it is now a small minority that want to maintain the status quo with regard to our relationship with Israel. So, what were those internal conversations like, to the extent that you can share some of the details? Because it's just very hard for me to understand why any cynical politician would look at this landscape on the Democratic side at this point and say, I want to stay with this position that has like 15% support among my own voters at this point.
Look, people were saying, you're going to cut the Middle East diplomacy program. I said, by definition, that's probably one of the programs that should be cut or something. Hasn't worked.
How's it working?
You want to look at government programs that don't work or something. But beyond that, okay, fine. You want to have those programs. That was less than 1% of the aid. And you could have voted for Massey's bill and then still said an amendment saying, well, we want to keep the program for Middle East peace. But I do think it's a mistake for anyone who voted this way morally, but also politically. If you look at Claire Valdez, you look at Brad Lander, you look at Milat, you look at Anna Lilia, you look at Adam Hamawi, you look at Plattner before the scandals, Abdul. The driving line in these issues is the funding on Israel and Gaza. And the Democrats want to kind of whitewash that part. Oh, Zoran or these candidates won because of affordability. They won because they wanted free childcare, freeze the rent, or Medicare for all. Although it matters. But the first point of the animating difference that is motivating these candidates and the energy is Israel. I mean, Milat would have been no shot to beat DeGette. DeGette was good on all the issues. She was for Medicare for all, living wage. Why did she lose? She lost on this issue.
Wow.
And I just think that the political leadership hasn't grappled with that reality.
Congressman Matt, I was coming to you because you were the only Republican who voted for it. I know you speak to many of your colleagues. You and I both know you're not the only person who thinks something like this.
Correct.
So why do they all? Well, why do they still see political utility in supporting Israel?
Because I just lost my election. I mean, $30 million, and 98% of that came from AIPAC or Republican Jewish Coalition or Miriam Adelson. It was all the race against me was fueled and funded by the Israeli lobby. And they made an example out of me, and it worked. I mean, you're getting senators who are changing their positions. You're getting House representatives, folks who are just going underground on the Republican side, not saying anything about it. But the one thing I want to talk about, Two things. They realize this is a political liability, the Israeli lobby. So they're trying to take away the transparency of this money that's being spent, and they're trying to integrate it into our military budget. So it won't be a line item that Congress votes on. It'll be inside of one of these giant military omnibus type programs. And we won't even know, because we'll just, instead of giving them gift certificates for Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, we'll give them the bombs from Raytheon. And
they would develop them with us.
Right.
It is almost integrated.
Well, that's the second part, is that.
Is that not a national security concern for us? Because we've had our military secrets stolen by the Mossad and Israelis before. They've used weapons against us. They've bombed our servicemen. So how is it that we are still not realizing that supporting Israel is understandable, but integrating them in our military is mind-blowing? That there are people who are even saying that, especially those who say America first. It's crazy.
Section 219 of the NDAA is now, it's very toxic. And I'm trying to get a vote on that to strip that. Section 219 is, I think, what Rose was alluding to, which is integration of our intelligence and military with supply chains, supply lines and technology with Israel. It's a country of 10 million people.
Right.
Like, it's not even like NATO, where they're at least the third of the size of us, and there might be some reciprocal arrangement that could help in a world war. That's not going to help. With Israel can't help us in a war of a scale where our sovereignty is affected. It's only going to hurt us. Anyways, I'm trying to get an amendment in order to strip 219 from the NDAA. And if I can't get that done, or they don't allow us to have that vote, I think they're jeopardizing the NDAA. That stands for National Defense Authorization Act. It's one of the must-pass pieces of legislation, like a farm bill or a highway bill that passes every year.
Right.
Congressman Massey, I wanted to ask you some about that money that was spent against you. And I think you're right. They definitely wanted to make an example of you. A lot of that money came from the Israel lobby. They're now trying to do a similar thing with Abdul Sayed in the Michigan primary on the Democratic side. I think $50 million have come in. And again, the ads have nothing to do with Israel. They're claiming he's a sexist because he one time mildly criticized Michelle Obama. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that they're going with here. And I do wonder, again, from your perspective as a libertarian, if that changes any of your view of the ability for a democracy to coexist with billionaires, the impact of money in politics. What are your views there? Has that shaped your philosophy or thinking about how we handle this flood of money, which is not just the Israel lobby, it's big pharma, it's big oil, it's the banks, it's all sorts of interests?